Throughout my 15-year fitness career, there are a couple of things that I thought were true, but actually ended up being more harmful and distracting than anything else. After years of coaching, graduate school, and going through real-life challenges like raising 2 kids and building a business, my perspective has changed a lot. And in this video, I'm going to break down the 3 biggest beliefs that I used to have when it comes to health and fitness so that you can avoid them and avoid all the headaches that I went through. Let's go ahead and get right into it. So the first belief that I've completely shifted my mind on is actually about nutrition. And it's the fact that I used to think that calories were the only thing that mattered. Okay. And now I want to provide nuance and context here because obviously those things really matter. And some people are going to say like, what are you talking about, Dr. Joey? I thought calories are the only thing that matters for fat loss. And technically true to some extent, but I want to add nuance here. Okay. So when I started my whole health and fitness journey, for lack of a better term, 14, 15 years ago, I learned about, well, actually, when I started, I was pretty rigid when it came to dieting, right? And it was just about eating clean. I would watch content on YouTube. I used to watch people like Scooby. I don't know if you guys are OG YouTube fans, but Scooby was one of the first like fitness influencers on YouTube. And he would always talk about like, if it tastes good, spit it out. And all you have to eat is like dry, bland, boring food. And that'll help you get ripped and jacked. And so that was my first experience. And even before that, my mom had put me on all sorts of diets, and it was just about eating like super clean protein and no sugars, no carbs, nothing like that. And it was pretty restrictive, right? And I had a hard time sticking to those sorts of recommendations because I've always really liked food. And then I started learning more about flexible dieting. Maybe when I was like, I don't know, 16, 17, I started watching Dr. Layne Norton on social media, reading his posts on bodybuilding.com, and started learning about the concept of calories and the fact that you don't need to be really restrictive with your diet and you can have some flexibility, and calories are essentially what matters for losing weight. And I went the complete opposite route and was just like 100% into the whole flexible dieting thing. My diet wasn't healthy by any means. It wasn't super unhealthy, but it wasn't like a very well-balanced, healthy diet full of minimally processed foods and high in fiber, high in fruits and veggies, nothing like that. I would just count my calories if I wanted to lose weight, and that was it, right? And being a young adult, it's probably when I was 17, 18 years old, it was pretty easy to just count my calories because I was also really active. I would play a ton of basketball. I would lift every single day. I would walk a ton since I was in college, and like it was easy, right? But, and this isn't something I realized till like way, way later, I had a really unhealthy relationship with food and my body image when I was just focusing on calories, because I would gain a ton of weight. I would overeat. I would go to the food hall in college and eat a ton of like pizza and ice cream and cereal with milk and like way overdo it because I was quote unquote bulking. And then I would feel uncomfortable in my skin, and then I would cut my calories a ton, but I wouldn't make drastic changes to my food choices. And so for years I would go through this yo-yo of like losing 30 pounds, gaining 30 pounds, losing 30 pounds, gaining 30 pounds. And there are many factors that contributed to this, but I think the emphasis on just focusing on calories to manipulate body composition and not focusing on the quality of my nutrition, which is what I try to do more now, was one of the reasons why I had such a hard time just maintaining a consistent body composition where I felt comfortable in. Because again, when I would just restrict calories way too much and not focus on my food choices, I would feel really hungry. But I had the willpower and discipline to just eat very little, and I would do that for a couple of months and I would lose a ton of weight. But then essentially I would get frustrated, I would give up, and I would start eating way more and just way overdo it because I never focused on the foods that I was consuming that helped manage my hunger and my satiety. Now I focus much more on the quality of my diet, right? You guys hear me talk a ton about the importance of nutrition-related habits, things like eating whole foods, things like protein and fiber, having a regular meal schedule. And that approach has allowed me to, one, not be hyperfixated on calories. I mean, calories do matter. Obviously, I always talk about the importance of calories for body composition manipulation, but I'm not so hyperfixated on the caloric content of all the foods because I know that the way that I eat helps me naturally regulate my hunger and my satiety so that I don't end up overeating, right? I don't track my calories at all. I haven't done so in years. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm against calorie tracking. I'm very much a big proponent of calorie tracking for somebody who's never tracked calories and for somebody who doesn't have healthy dietary behaviors, because tracking calories helps develop awareness around nutrition. But I have a much more quote unquote holistic approach when it comes to nutrition now. And I hate the word holistic because it's been hijacked. But what I mean by that is that I just focus on making healthy food choices, right? So I have a regular meal schedule. I have 3 meals and 1 or 2 snacks every day. My snacks are focused on protein and fiber. Usually it's something like some cheese sticks or some Greek yogurt, or maybe some beef jerky or some nuts and some fruit. Those are my typical snacks. So like I focus on whole foods. They help me feel satiated. My meals always have 40 to 50 grams of protein from a whole food source, whether that's beef, chicken, eggs, whatever. I always have a serving or two of fruits and veggies with my meals. I always have, a good 7 to 10 grams of fiber with all of my meals. So I focus much more on the quality of my diet. And as a byproduct, I'm able to maintain a pretty healthy body composition, right? I'm not ripped by any means, but I do have lightly visible abs. I feel comfortable at the weight that I'm at. I'm able to maintain my weight nicely year round. It doesn't really take a ton of work. And I credit that to the fact that I've been able to focus more on dietary habits, dietary behaviors, the quality of my nutrition, focusing on the healthy behaviors that help me naturally regulate my hunger and my satiety, right? And one thing that's helped me do this, because sometimes, and let me be honest, I don't just eat clean food, and I don't even like the term clean. You guys know this. I'm pretty flexible with my diet. If I go out on the weekends, I'll have some ice cream, I'll have a slice of pizza, not a big deal. But 90% of the time, I'm pretty on point with my dietary behaviors. And one of the things that has allowed me to shift my mindset and be more focused on quality over just calories is the fact that I also have a more quote unquote holistic approach to health and fitness. I'm not just focused on looking a certain way. I'm focused on feeling a certain way, being healthy, right? Food also goes beyond just the caloric value in the sense that certain foods have particular health related benefits. Like if we eat more fiber, it's going to help reduce the risk of things like cardiovascular disease and cancers, right? So I focus more on the quality of my diet because I care about my long-term health as well. And as a byproduct, it's just been easier to maintain my body composition in a way that makes me happy, in a way that I feel comfortable and confident without having to obsess over the caloric content of every single little thing that I eat. So that's the first big shift I've made in terms of things that I used to believe. I used to believe it was all about calories. People that don't want to track their calories are just lazy. It's super easy to just track calories. If anybody has a hard time tracking calories, they're just not disciplined. And I've realized none of that is actually true, right? Calories matter, but I think it's so much more important to focus on healthy dietary behaviors now, especially if somebody has never focused on healthy dietary behaviors and they're trying to really improve their overall health. I actually recommend focusing on the healthy dietary behaviors before even focusing on the calories. And this actually leads to this is a big factor that influences our coaching approach as well at Fit for Life Academy. When we work with a new client, if they've never really focused on the quality of their diet and they have a pretty, quote unquote unhealthy diet, they don't really even know how much protein they eat, we focus on all the habits first before even introducing calorie tracking. Most coaches just tell you eat these many calories or eat this many calories, eat this much protein, carbs and fats, and that's about it. And that's pretty hard for somebody to do if they've never focused on the quality of their nutrition. They don't really even know what a healthy diet is. So we're much more focused on the habits and the behaviors because that's what sets the foundation to then be able to manipulate your body composition in a healthy and sustainable way. Now, the second thing that I've shifted my perspective on is the idea that more training volume is always better when it comes to muscle growth and improving strength. You guys know that I absolutely love training. I get pumped up to go to the gym. I love lifting heavy weight. And as a byproduct, I love going to the gym as much as possible. Right? I used to train 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, and I would be at the gym for an hour and a half to 2 hours back when I was in college, simply because I loved it so much. And I always had this idea that more is better, more is better, more is better. And here's the thing, theoretically, more is better. If you train with greater volume, if you train with more intensity, in general, you will have better progress. You will build more muscle, you will get stronger, but there's one big caveat, and that is that you have to be able to recover appropriately from your training, right? And your ability to recover from training is influenced by a number of different variables, including stress, including sleep, including nutrition, genetics, etc., right? And I've had a big shift in the way I think about volume and intensity when it comes to progressing in the gym, because I've essentially been forced to only go to the gym 3 times a week now. I've been going to the gym 3 times a week for the past, 5 months, and it's the first time in my life I've only trained 3 times a week for this prolonged period of time, and truthfully, I'm absolutely loving it, and I want to talk about this. Because I always thought if I train 6 days a week and I go down to 3 days a week, I'm going to lose so much muscle. I'm going to get weaker. I'm not training nearly as much. I'm training half the amount of time that I used to train. It's not going to be good, right? And I say I've been forced to because We had our daughter, so now we have 2 kids. My son's 2, my daughter's 5 months old. Work has picked up a ton. I've been really focused on building my business. My wife wants time to go to the gym as well, so I take care of the kids so she can go. And it's hard. It's a lot to manage. Like, my schedule really allows me to go 3 days a week now, and now I spend a good amount of time in the gym. Sometimes I'm there for like an hour and a half to 2 hours, but I only go 3 times a week, and I'm doing probably like 60 to 70% of the volume that I used to do. And surprisingly, I'm making amazing progress in the gym. And I think it's mainly because I used to feel like I was always chronically under-recovered going into the gym when I was training 4 or 5 times a week. So not even 4 times a week, 5 or 6 times a week, I should say. Like, I worked out today, it would be a good workout, and then I would go into the gym tomorrow and just feel tired, even if I was training a different body part. So it would affect my intensity in the gym. I wouldn't be able to push as hard. And since I'm going every day, like, that fatigue would accumulate. I would always be having some like small nagging pains. I didn't have the intensity and the focus. And I just thought like, I just gotta get over this and just put my head down and train, which I did because I like training. So like the quote unquote, the discipline was there. I was disciplined, but I wasn't making really good progress. I wasn't making bad progress, but I wasn't making amazing progress by any means. And now training 3 days a week, I'm making just as good, if not better progress. And I think it's because I'm recovering better. Like I said, 1, work is stressful for me. Like, building my business is an absolute priority to me. It's on my mind 24/7. If things aren't going well, I get stressed out. That impacts my ability to fall asleep. I have 2 little kids. They don't really sleep through the night, so I wake up 3 or 4 times every single night. Sometimes I get a really shitty night of sleep, and like all of that impacts recovery. And then throw on top of that 6 days of training, I just wasn't recovering well at all. And what training 3 days a week has allowed me to do is recover a lot better. So every time I go into the gym, I train Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I have a rest day between each workout. Every time I go into the gym, I'm like excited to go to the gym. I feel really refreshed. I mean, sometimes I still feel a little tired if I had a bad night of sleep, but most of the time I feel really refreshed. The intensity is there. I'm pumped. I'm hitting a small PR pretty much every single week, which to me is big because I've been training for 15 years and progress substantially slows down when you've been training for so long, but I'm making such good progress in the gym and it's just so much more enjoyable. And I'm like, man, I can't believe that I'm making better progress, training less, spending less time in the gym, having more time to dedicate to my family and my business. It's kind of just a win-win, right? And this doesn't mean train less, guys, right? Like if you're going to the gym 4 or 5 times a week and you feel good and you're making good progress and you recover well, that doesn't mean that you should just drop your training 3 days a week. It just means that you should take a look at your fatigue and your recovery, right? And if you feel like you're chronically under-recovered when you go into the gym and you have a fear of reducing the training frequency, don't. Because it's literally been a win-win for me overall. And I definitely want to get back into training 4 or 5 days a week. But it's just not that season of life for me at the moment, right? I need to make sure my kids are sleeping through the night. I'm recovering better so that I can then add more volume and actually recover from it. So the second biggest thing I've shifted my perspective on is this idea that more training volume, higher intensity is always better. Again, in a vacuum, in theory, it is, but in a practical situation, it isn't, right? Or I should say in a practical sense, because so many variables around your lifestyle, your genetics, influence your ability to recover and progress from training. And now the third thing that I've really shifted my perspective on, and I know that this one is going to ruffle some feathers, is that I used to think that taking care of yourself, taking care of your health and fitness, when you have a full-time job and when you have kids is exponentially more difficult than when you don't, right? What I've realized is it is a little bit more difficult. Of course, it's a little bit more difficult, but it really comes down to prioritization, time management, and making the right choices. Again, I am so much busier than I used to be in graduate school. Like when I was doing my PhD, guys, I used to think I was so busy I couldn't do anything else. And thinking back on it now, it's like, it's laughable, right? Because you don't know what you don't know, essentially. And it's funny because if you think back into your early 20s and maybe even like late 20s, if you didn't have kids, if you weren't like super career driven, you probably thinking back on it now, you're probably like, man, I had a lot of time, right? Like I wasn't as busy as I am now. But I'm sure that when you were going through it, you didn't feel that way. You probably felt like you were super busy. You probably felt like you didn't have much time. And that's because when your capacity for work wasn't developed yet, like that's one thing that I'm a big believer on, like your capacity to do more increases over time. And two, you didn't have the time management skills that you had now, right? You were more disorganized, you weren't as focused. And so it felt chaotic. It felt like there was a lot of stuff going on in your life. And I remember when I was in graduate school, like I was in school, 8 to 10 hours a day most days. I was doing lab work, I was teaching, and the gym was like the main thing that I did outside of that. And I always thought like, man, when I add kids to this, how am I going to be able to take care of my health and fitness? And what I realized is you find a way. Now things have to give, right? Like when I was in graduate school, I would mainly go to school. My wife and I lived together. So like we've been dating for, we've been married for 4 years. I think we've been together for like 10 or 11 years now. So I was in graduate school when we first met. I was starting graduate school when we first met. And so my time was school, spend time with my wife, which at the time was my girlfriend. I would play some video games. I would go to the gym, and I would go out with my friends every once in a while. Things have changed, right? Now it's, instead of graduate school, it's growing my business. I spend more time focusing on my business than I did in school. I still spend time with my wife, now my kids as well. I still prioritize my fitness. And I've pretty much given up all the things that I used to like doing. I say that jokingly, but it's true, right? Like I never ever have time to, play some video games anymore, which I loved doing and spending time with friends. I don't really ever go out with friends anymore, like rarely. I used to love playing basketball. I don't really do that anymore, but it's because I have chosen my particular priorities, right? Like for example, I'm recording this on a Wednesday. Not on a Wednesday, on a Saturday. It's 1 p.m. on a Saturday. I've been working since 10 a.m. this morning. I do that because my business is a priority to me, right? And then I mentioned I'm not training 6 days a week, but I'm still training 3 days a week. And I've been able to modify things with my training to where I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life right now. I feel the strongest. I feel the healthiest. And that's while, again, growing a business and having 2 little kids and having a shit ton of stuff going on in my life. I'm still getting it done, right? And when it comes to nutrition, I feel like this is the one where people struggle with. They're like, I'm so busy, I can't eat healthy. And it's like, you still need to eat, right? We all eat every day. It's about making the right choices. And sometimes the making the right choices is difficult if you don't have the tools to make the right choices. Meaning, like a lot of times people are like, I don't have time to eat, so I always eat on the road. I just don't have time to cook all my meals. And it's like, you don't have to cook your meals. You can just make better choices when you're on the road. And you can be more mindful around moving and getting some physical activity. And you can prioritize your workouts and give up other things in your life. Like, yeah, you may not want to give up those other things, but I'm a big believer that just because you have other things going on in your life, like your health and fitness don't have to take the back seat. They can still be really important. They can still be a priority to you. You just have to have better time management and actually make them a priority and set boundaries as well around things that affect your ability to make them a priority, right? Like, hey, although I'm focusing on really growing my business and I'm working on a Saturday today, I go to the gym Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9 to 11 a.m. and I don't let anything get in the way of that time. Like I block it off in my calendar. That is my gym time. That's commuting and coming back. That's why it's 2 hours. And some people might be thinking or hearing that and saying like, oh, it's nice that you could take 2 hours in the middle of the day and go to the gym. Yeah, it is nice. But I've intentionally designed my life in a way that allows me to do that, right? I didn't just like fall into the position that I'm in today. I have intentionally made choices that have allowed me to live my life the way that I want to. So like I said, the third thing that I've really changed my perspective on is this idea that as life gets busier, as you progress through life, it becomes exponentially more difficult to take care of your health and fitness. And I really don't think that's true. I really do think it comes down to prioritization, time management, and expanding your capacity to do more. With that said, let's go ahead and wrap up this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you are somebody who's trying to lose body fat, build muscle, improve your health, you're having a hard time doing so consistently, or you just want to reset because you haven't been staying consistent for the past couple of months, I'm going to encourage you to check out our 21-day Lean Strong Challenge. Again, we start on Monday, June 2nd. Registration is open right now. We're capping it at 60 spots. I have no idea how many spots are already taken because I'm actually recording this before we even launch it. But head over to fitforlifeacademy.health/challenge. The link is down in the description, and the first 30 people to register will get an early bird special. See you in next week's episode. Peace.